Hello and welcome back to another episode of More of a Six. This is a little bonus episode with just me and Kyle because Kyle dropped me a message and said that he wanted to vent his frustrations about the Ballon d'Or rankings. And in fairness, I'd made a TikTok video. I was just telling Kyle before we recorded, and unfortunately, I tried to cancel the publishing or whatever, and it just completely deleted itself. But there was a lot of things about the Ballon d'Or rankings and the ceremony and everything that really pissed me off. So we're going to have a little chat about the kind of top 30 rankings that we found out last night. We're going to talk about players that we think are higher than where they should be, players that are much lower than where they should be. We're going to talk about whether Ousmane Dembele should have won it, if not who, and also just kind of dive into kind of each player really, because I feel like there's a lot to talk about. It probably won't be the longest episode, but I say that we could end up just chatting for quite a while. So we're just going to jump straight in. See, the top 30 got released yesterday. One of my main gripes with the whole thing was how long it took, and just the fact that it was about a 6 hour ceremony.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't
hours.
really. I understand there's a lot of awards to give out, and they've got to do obviously the women's top 30, the keepers, which by the way, we'll touch on in a bit. But why is Emiliano Martinez still getting put in conversations for the best keeper in the world? There's all sorts to crack on with. So let's just go. So obviously, 30th place in the men's was Michael Elise, who obviously I'm a massive fanboy of. What do you make of that ranking, Kyle?
I think. Sorry, my phone's going off. I think that's ridiculous. To be fair, as long like especially when you look at other names such as like Vinicius Junior, I I think that they're quite comparable with like they're two young winners playing at two top clubs. Obviously, different types of players. There's no way Vinicius Junior should be ranking 14 places higher than Elise. Elise's numbers were better. If on the eye, Elise had a better season as well. Vinicius looked half the player to the season before, which yeah, there was probably an argument to say that he could have won the Ballon d'Or over Rodri the season prior, but he just hasn't looked the same since then. I don't know. I don't know what it's been. Maybe it's because Mbappe's kind of found his form and is doing really well at Madrid, so he's no longer necessarily the main man. But I just seeing some of these names like Declan Rice as well, 27. There's no way Declan Rice had a better season than Elise. He had a very good season. But I mean, I'll let you speak. Because obviously, you're the Palace fan who's seen him for week in week out for a few years, and you love the player. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'd just say that, I called this a long time ago, pretty much after the first time I ever saw Elise play for Palace. I was like, this guy's going to be in conversations for Ballon d'Ors and he's going to be one of the best players in the world. And he's only gone to prove that. Um, I think, I agree with you even about Vinicius Junior. I think this is my issue with the Ballon d'Or. Are we talking about players being ranked based on how good they are at football? Because to be honest, if it was purely ranked on how good a person is at football, Lionel Messi would have won it for 15 years in a row, and there's no doubt of that in my mind. I know that a lot of people are either Messi or Ronaldo, but I think Ronaldo obviously puts up and had put up incredible numbers. In terms of the best footballer, Lionel Messi is the best to ever play the game and that ever will play the game. Vinicius did have a good year last year. If you see me looking to my right, I'm just looking at each player's numbers as we speak about them. He played 52 games, got 21 goals and 15 assists in all competitions for Real Madrid. So obviously a very good return. I think Elise's numbers were similar, um, but but I think you've got to take the context of how good these people are, how good they are to watch, and a side note with Vinicius, I feel like there is a part of the French football Ballon d'Or where they maybe put off awarding him ever because of his antics last year. I think not turning up. We saw with Lamine Yamal and Ousmane Dembele really the two favourites. We'll talk about whether that was valid as well. There's so much to talk about, but both turn up. Lamine congratulates Ousmane straight away. But last year, Vinicius didn't even go. The whole Real Madrid squad boycotted the event, which really just left a sour taste. Um, Yeah, so for me, Elise should be higher. I think and this is what I mean. So, Fabian Ruiz, for example, 6 places high. He's a great player, one of my favourite midfielders in the world. And I absolutely adore every single one of those PSG midfielders. But I wouldn't say Fabian Ruiz or Denzel Dumfries or Alexis McAllister or Lautaro Martinez are technically better players than Michael Elise. And that's kind of where the conversation comes up of what are we actually ranking players on. I'm going to let you share one of your pet peeves. Let's start with your obvious frustration about Harry Kane's placement. Obviously, he finished 13th in the Ballon d'Or this year, which was only 2 places above Victor Gyökeres. What do you make of that?
Well, firstly, and this is one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, with the modern day Ballon d'Or is that it is just a popularity contest of where journalists get the votes, well, like all of that. I think because Kane is this like I'm going to sound like such a Twitter kind of tactico right now, but because Kane isn't this quick, flashy player that isn't a genetic freak, um, I just think that for a PR side of things, he's never going to have the kind of an edge over players such as I don't know, for example, Desire Doué, who he finished 1 place behind Harry Kane, or like Cole Palmer is probably the biggest example. But Cole Palmer, he had an electric 2 3 months at the start of the season, and then come the new year, fell off a cliff. He was absolutely awful. I think he had one non-penalty goal for a good couple of months of the season.
But going off of that quickly, sorry, it's just for me, like I'd probably say that Palmer and Kane are on a similar level at the moment, but we're ranking it based on the year, right? And
yeah,
Palmer was by no means better than Harry Kane last year. He just
yeah.
wasn't. I mean, it doesn't matter how you try and spin it. That just is not the case whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, he had near 50 goal contributions, and I think Kane's biggest issue was that everyone would bring up the fact of like his lack of trophies. Well, he's went and won a Bundesliga now, which obviously there's going to always be some sort of Bundesliga isn't a very competitive league, all of that, but he has won it. The year after they lost it to Leverkusen, where we saw that unbelievable Xavi Alonso side, they've got their title back. He's had a brilliant season. Across the season, in all competitions, I think he scored near 55 goal contributions in a year, which is
Yeah, it
absolutely
was
mental.
it was 50, sorry, it was 49 goal contributions for Bayern, so this doesn't include
Yeah,
England. And that was only in 46 games. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous numbers. And then even now, just the start of the season, this is genuinely mind blowing. He's played 7 games and he's scored 13 goals and
yeah,
got 3 assists this season. And I understand that it's based on the previous campaign, but I mean, just as a kind of a a, I don't know, another way to back up your point, you know, 16 goal contributions in 7 games. And like
that is
that is
mental.
not a player. That is not a player in the slightest that should be finishing 13th in the Ballon d'Or rankings. Not in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, you're telling me that 12 people have had a better season than him. It's ridiculous. I know, obviously, with a lot of the PSG players who we'll probably talk about a little bit later, they did have a historic season. I can't remember how many teams have done what they've done, where they've won the domestic double and the Champions League. It is a very rare feat. But I just think as well, and another thing, I think with journalists like Fabrizio Romano these days having such a huge influence on football fans, like how fans actually kind of take in footballing information. He posts a lot about Chelsea, an extreme amount about Chelsea, an extreme amount about Cole Palmer. It is purely these days a PR thing, and I think Harry Kane, because I don't mean to make this sort of like me, well, all about Tottenham. Unfortunately, he spent 10 years of his career at Tottenham where he didn't win anything. I think real fans know, like real fans of football know just how good he is. But I think when you've got the English media as well as Gary Lineker, Mika Richards during the World Cup and during the Euros, saying that he needs to be dropped for Ollie Watkins, or even in 2021 it was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, for Christ's sake, saying that he needs to drop back. And this this person I follow on Twitter called ONTHFC, I don't know if you've seen him before on there, but he made a really good point of that the only person on the panel who actually kind of backed Kane during that point was Thomas Frank. And he made the point of it's really hard for a striker to play at the level required or expected of him when the other 10 players aren't meeting them expectations. If you look at the England squad, it should have won something by now. And I don't think that's Kane's fault. Everyone just gets on him. The English fans, English media, English pundits, they always have done. And I think it is because he spent the majority of his season at Spurs and he just has absolutely no positive PR about him, really.
I couldn't agree more. But also, what I would say is that I don't see how you can use that as a stick to beat him with. I'm just going to run you through a couple of standout numbers from his time at Spurs, where obviously he didn't win anything. Okay, so for example, his final season at Spurs, 22-23, 49 games played, 2 goals. 17-18, 48 games played, 41 goals. 16-17, 38 games played, 35 goals. I mean, and then he transfers to the Bundesliga, and in his first season in the Bundesliga, in 45 games for Bayern Munich in all competitions, of course, he gets 56 goal contributions, 44 goals, and obviously he does take a lot of penalties. And I think if you took his penalty goals away from his league goals last season in the Bundesliga, I think he had nine penalty goals. I think he was outscored in terms of open play goals by both Serhou Guirassy, who we'll talk about in a bit, and also Patrick Schick. But I think what you need to do is you need to kind of talk about, what this player actually does in general and as a whole, because you watch him play, and he's, especially since Musiala's been injured, and I watch a lot of Bayern Munich, mainly because I love Elise so much, but also because they're my German team. I mean, I used to, it sounds really plastic, I used to kind of really follow Dortmund because I love Jadon Sancho. But ever since Elise went to Bayern, I just had to start watching them more. And I just absolutely love them. And, Kane will play as a striker, a 10, an 8, and a 6 all at the same time in the same game. He's often playing between the two centre backs. He's often Bayern's deepest player other than their two centre backs. And then 15 seconds later, he's inside the opposition's box scoring a goal. And he does this constantly. And I think, his range of passing, his intelligence, his finishing ability, which is just deadly on both feet. Scores a lot of penalties, but he scores them. You rarely see Harry Kane miss penalty. The only one I can think of is against France. In the World Cup, however long ago that was.
Which everyone clings to as well.
They really do,
Everyone
yeah.
clings to that as an excuse of he never turns up in the big games, or he always bottles it in the big games. And it's like the amount of stuff he's done for
I
England,
hate that.
I
I hate
definitely
that
can't.
argument. I hate that argument as well, just in general, because I mean, every game in the Premier League season is a big game, really. And
Yeah,
even if you don't want to say every game is, at least 10 games that you'll play in the Premier League are big games against the other biggest clubs in the league.
yeah.
Um, let's move on from Kane, because I think we're both fully in agreement, and let's talk quickly, very quickly, about the women's Ballon d'Or, because Aitana Bonmati was crowned the women's Ballon d'Or. I don't actually like how they say it. She isn't, because they say Aitana Bonmati is the Ballon d'Or. She's not the Ballon d'Or, because the Ballon d'Or is a trophy. I don't know why, that's just a pet peeve for me. But she was crowned the best women's player in the world. A season where she won a domestic treble with Barcelona. And I think this is another important thing, because I think it was Maria Caldente and Alessia Russo were second, and third. Obviously, Arsenal won the Champions League with both of those players, beating Bonmati's Barcelona side. And I think for me, people speaking about how, like, she shouldn't have won it. She lost the Euros final. She lost the Champions League final. And the thing I like about Bonmati winning it is because Bonmati is by far and away the best women's footballer there is. I mean, I don't watch an awful lot of the women's game, but every time I watch Bonmati play, she's just flawless, just excellent technician, very reminiscent of Xavi, Iniesta style, which obviously were her idols growing up. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly because I do think there's
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah,
comparison between the men's and women's in terms of how it's awarded. You touched on earlier about the media and about Fabrizio talking about Palmer, for example. What I want to talk about now is the comparison between Lamine Yamal and Rafinha. Okay, so both played for Barcelona last season, of course. Lamine Yamal finished second and Rafinha finished fifth. Okay, so that meant Rafinha finished, of course, behind the winner, Ousmane Dembele and Lamine Yamal, but also Vitinha of PSG and Mohamed Salah. Now, for me, this is one where the PR really comes into it because there is no question that Barcelona really pushed for Lamine Yamal to win this Ballon d'Or. And part of me has to question why. Because Rafinha, like obviously Lamine Yamal is an absolute superstar. He won the
so
Copper
good a
Trophy,
player.
of course.
Yeah,
Just such a good player. Rafinha had one of the best campaigns we have ever seen from a player. Full stop. I
absolutely.
mean, 57 games, and I'll do the maths quickly. 6 goal contributions in 57 games for Barcelona. He equaled the joint most goals in the Champions League campaign of any player. I think it was matched Cristiano Ronaldo. I think it was 12 games, 12 goals, sorry, in 9 or 10 games. Just absolutely mental. He carried them on his back at times. And I really don't think he gets or, did get or has got the respect that he deserves for that season. Um, you know, on comparison, I'm just going to quickly get Lamine Yamal stats up. So obviously,
Nine
Rafinha,
league goals, 9 league goals.
9 league goals, but even deeper than that, 18 goals, 21 assists. So do the maths really quickly. That's 39 goal contributions in 55. So it's almost 20 goal contributions less than Rafinha. And it was allegedly he was clear and above Rafinha in terms of this. I mean, what do you think about that contrast between those two players particularly?
I think it's just shiny, like new toy syndrome, ain't it? Really, like Yamal's this kind of new kid on the block, like who's. I mean, this is his second kind of full season now in professional football. It's still quite. He's still kind of got that shiny new toy thing about him. Whereas I think with um, Rafinha, he's been about for quite a while. He struggled maybe for a few years after leaving Leeds to Barcelona. He kind of wasn't putting up the numbers as what he is now. And I just think again, like you said earlier about the media, how many times have we seen Fabrizio Romano post about Lamine Yamal of like, oh, another brace today. Reminder, he's only 17 years old, and it's just like
Yeah.
that's just constantly being
and
thrown
and
down
and
our
that
throats.
definitely has an impact. So I got really curious because I was getting confused because as the players were being announced, from 30th to 1st, of course, it would say their name, their age, their position, their nationality, and also how many nominations they had. But you had players that were finishing 5 places higher that had 2 nominations than a player that had 7 nominations. And I was really struggling to get my head around how it actually works. So, according to the wonderful Google, one football journalist from each of the top 100 FIFA ranked nations cast a vote for their top 10 men's and women's player in order, and the points are awarded to players based on where they are ranked in the journalist top 10. So, of course, that means obviously it's a top 30. So, essentially, if a player is only selected in one person's top 10 or 2 people's top 10, they're going to have a lot less votes, and a lot less points. You get points based on how high you are in that top 10 as well. And I think that definitely has an impact. And, like you said, how often did you see about Lamine Yamal? How often do you see about Cole Palmer? And that 100% does influence people, especially journalists from countries that aren't as big. Do you remember when fucking Fogden was almost going to be have a vote for wherever he's got
Yes,
citizenship? I
I
can't
remember.
remember,
Yeah,
but
I remember.
that's just another example of it, really. But for me, it just doesn't make any sense that Rafinha finished fifth, to be honest. I think Vitinha had a great season. He's a great player, technically a wonderful footballer. But if we're going to look at numbers, which we apparently do, then he didn't have a better season than Rafinha. Sorry, very similar names. Um, let's let's talk about the winner, Ousmane Dembele. For me, I'm thrilled. I mean, this is like such a lovely story. Obviously, he went from kind of the failed wonder kid, numerous injuries, and he's ultimately overcome it all and become a Ballon d'Or winner. Quite rightfully so, in my opinion. What did you make of the decision for him to win it?
He turned up in some huge games for PSG last season, particularly in the Champions League. That goal against Arsenal, that beautiful finish. I don't know if you know or like remember the one I'm on about, where he kind of like hit it far post in off the post. He has he has came in clutch a lot of times this year, and to be fair, he scored 21 league goals. He only played 29 games as well, which is a really, really solid return.
Yeah, so it was
Particularly if you think about
40.
the a lot.
It was 46 goal contributions in 49 games in all competitions for PSG.
I mean, yeah, the numbers speak for it themselves, really. Which I mean, then there's always going to be that discourse around it of being like, where he plays for PSG and it's Liga, and they win it every year. But the thing is, you can only really play against who you're facing. Like, you can only play against who you're facing.
Yeah,
It's
for
not
sure.
really his fault that the rest of the French league isn't that great. There are a few good teams in the French league, but for the most
But even
part,
then,
it's
even then, I think you put these players in, interchange them between the leagues. I think they'd probably still do as well. I think the only league that maybe is different is the Premier League. But in La Liga, you play against as many shit teams as you do in the Bundesliga or in Liga. The
yeah,
Bundesliga is actually quite a competitive league, as is Liga. If you actually spend some time looking at the
yeah,
leagues, watching them, looking at different matches. Obviously, for example, Marseille beat PSG 1-0 last night. And, you know, for me, there's just this. I don't know. I just feel like it's such an easy argument to make is, oh, well, it's Farmers League. But is it? PSG won
yeah,
the Champions League. They obviously not a bad team. You can't. So therefore, you can't. If you saw what I'm trying to say, you can't use the Farmers League argument when that team have also gone and won the Champions League. And for me as well, I think important to note about Usman is that it's a very new. He's essentially changed position to a centre forward after Mbappe's departure, and has not only fulfilled the kind of base expectation that you might have of him, but he's completely eclipsed that. It's his first season as a central striker, and he scored 33 goals in 49 games. I mean, that's
yeah.
just absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
I mean,
I
he achieved something that Mbappe couldn't as well. There was all this talk about, like, Mbappe. They literally brought in Mbappe, Neymar, and Messi to all play alongside each other in the hope of finally winning the Champions League, and they couldn't achieve it in his first season up front with a young, young team as well, with Desire Doe, Barcola. It's a young side. For him to do that in his first season at centre forward is absolutely. He got 14. Was it 14 or 13 goal contributions in the Champions League? Uh,
can't actually get his
14,
individual.
14. Yeah, so he got 8 goals, 6 assists in 15 matches. Like, he
It's
was
mental.
present across the entire tournament. It wasn't even a case of where he's ghosted for a part of it and performed really well during the rest. He was constant during the entire time for it. I think it's well done.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think obviously that, like I said earlier, the storyline, it being obviously in Paris, his hometown, um, it's just very inspirational with all the setbacks he's had. I mean, he was kind of written off, I think, but just before he moved to PSG. Excuse me, we are recording very late. Coming to the end of his time at Barcelona, he was kind of written off, and he'd been so bright at Dortmund, and obviously at Stade Rennes as well. And you're kind of expecting the world of him, and then he kind of, across 4 seasons, he didn't even score more than 25 goals. And then he gets this move back to PSG and has just been absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, I couldn't be more happy for him. I think he's a very worthy winner, and it also restores a bit more faith in kind of the award itself, because I do think that, for example, I think the season when Lewandowski should have won it and they decided to scrap it when he'd scored 55 goals or whatever it was, like that really kind of was a kicker for me. Lost a lot of
Yeah.
respect for kind of the competition and just the award in general. Let's talk about PSG then. We'll stay on them because 8 PSG players made the top 30, which was almost more than any other league combined. The Premier League had 9 players. Ligue 1 obviously had 8, all from PSG, and then we had 7 from La Liga, and I believe 3 from both the Bundesliga and Serie A. Um, I mean, I think a lot of those PSG players are more than deserving. To be honest, I think they should all be in the top 30. I don't know if you've got anything else to add on that.
I'm just actually kind of glad to see fullbacks and the goalkeeper actually receiving some sort of credit for the season that they had. I mean, a lot of people talk about Hakimi because he's been very good for a good couple of years now. Nuno Mendes this year, like he was always a good player, but this year he has become an absolute monster. Like that, he is the best left back in the world. I can't really think of any other player that is better than him.
No, and
And
he just exploded
yeah,
as well. I mean, in the Champions League, especially, I'll just quickly get his numbers up. It was only 5 goals and 5 assists in 46 appearances for PSG, but that's still a very, very good return. And I just think that he had, excuse me, I really can't stop yawning. I just think he had such a good impact, and also that entire PSG midfield. João Neves, Vitinha, and Fabian Ruiz, who I rate all 3 ridiculously highly. It's just good to see them getting that recognition. A couple of interesting places. 26th place, Erling Haaland. I mean, what do you make of that?
let me just quickly get up. Like, I haven't actually looked at his stats from the year before, so let me just quickly Haaland
My
fantasy
computer's
team.
being very slow. I mean,
Yeah,
I
see, I
think what we
remember
go.
actually. No, sorry,
Sorry,
I
go
was
go
just going to
ahead.
say that. I was just to say I remember last year actually because I am an avid FPL player. I remember he scored something like 9 goals in the first 4 games, something ridiculous like that. But
Yeah, he
then
did. He
he
had a great
ended the
start.
season. Yeah, he ended the season on only 22 goals, which I say only like 22 goals in the Premier League in
It
31
was
games is a
it was
bad
it
return.
was
But
it was 31 goals in all competitions as well. So I think
yeah,
he definitely had a good season. I've just figured out how you can actually break it down. So he scored 8 Champions League goals in 9 games, which is great. And I mean, again, it's similar like you said with Kane. You definitely, without doubt, cannot tell me that there were 25 better players than Erling Haaland
no,
last year. There's
yeah,
just no chance. And
agreed.
this kind of brings the kind of judgment of this award that I have and the issue I have. I am so sorry. I'm so tired. Even Sergio Garassi, just had. I mean, you can tell me a bit more about him because I know you're quite a big fan. But he had such a good campaign, but he was ranked below Lautaro Martinez. So I'll tell you what, you get Garassi up, I'll get Lautaro up, and we can have a little comparison of their stats. Um,
Firstly, I'll start in the Champions League. So in 14 matches, he got 13 goals and 4 assists at Dortmund, by the way. So 17 goal contributions in 14 games. That is
yes,
insane.
yeah. So Martinez he played 14 Champions League games. Obviously, they got to the final, and he scored 9 goals, no assists. So Garassi's obviously output, and also just generally, he was just so good last year to watch. And this is the thing as well. It's not just about numbers. These players are some players are just incredible to watch at football, like Michael Elise. And that's why I do like the fact that, for example, Vitinha finished as high as he did because I absolutely adore watching him play football. I think he's fantastic. But even in the league, he played 31 games and only got 12 goals. That is not anything to write home about. It's less goals than Mateta got, for example, in the Premier League. Like he didn't have a better season than I think you could probably say than Jean-Philippe Mateta. Yet he's finished, you know, 20th in the Ballon d'Or, above Garassi,
Yeah,
above
absolutely.
Haaland, 6 places above Haaland. I just don't understand it.
Whereas, as well, so you said how many had Martinez scored? 12 in the league, was it?
Of in the league, yeah.
12 in the league. Urasti in 30 games scored 21 goals and got 2 assists, which again is it's a solid record. And I think that ties into it again about the whole popularity contest. And PR being such a huge part of the award these days. He's a player for the Guinea national team, which I mean they're just going to get nowhere near as much coverage as what your Spanish players are or your French players, and as well he's 29 as well, so it's a case of where I feel like Garassi's only really started to put up these numbers in the last few years or so.
Yeah,
Like
he's definitely
it's
one of these
quite
like kind of
late
late.
for it.
Yeah, he's definitely one of these late
Yeah,
bloomers. Kind of, I guess you could say similar to Jamie Vardy in that sense. Not
yeah,
quite as late, but yeah, I mean Garassi is such a good player, and like you said, the numbers don't lie. I mean, he was doing it, to be fair, before he moved to Dortmund. When he was at Stuttgart, he had a great season again. 30 goals in 30 games. Again, when he was at Stade Rennes, which is just a hotbed for talent, to be honest. And obviously, at this point, he was, I mean, what would it have been? 26
yeah.
goals across two campaigns at Stade Rennes. But he really has just blown up in the last kind of 2 to 3 seasons. His kind of full season at Stuttgart, and then also, excuse me, his following campaign, obviously last year at Dortmund. I'm really sorry about how much I'm yawning. I'm absolutely shattered. Speaking of, I know you mentioned kind of the national teams and where if that has an impact. Let's talk about Pedri, because Pedri finished 11th place, and we all saw his performance against Newcastle at St James's Park the other day. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world, without a doubt. But is he 11th best in the world?
Don't know because again, so this is kind of where it's such a grey area with like the Ballon d'Or now, and I think that's also like one of the negatives of letting journalists um, judge it is because are we basing it off of players who have had the best season or their opinion of who is the best player, like best players in the world? Because some of them would be judging it off of who has had the best season, whereas
Well, to be
others
honest,
might.
if I can jump in, if I could choose how to do it, you'd have the journalists put forward their top 30, and then players vote, because
Yeah,
nobody has a better, or players and managers, for example, vote, and it's done by their peers, because I think that's the best and most fair way that you can kind of analyze players' performance is by from each other. And obviously, you'd have your biases, and a lot of
yeah,
teammates would vote for their teammates. But if you're given a list of 30 and you can only pick one player, or you have to rank them, tell me where they're finishing, and they get points based on that. I think that would just be a much better way than just having a load of random journalists do it, to be honest.
absolutely. And as well, like I think, like you said, players. If you asked a player who has actually came up against Pedri, what is your opinion on Pedri? What's he like to play against? I
I think they
guarantee
do
you,
what I'm
nine out of
doing at the
ten.
minute and just keep yawning.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk
no,
about him. He's just ridiculous.
yeah, I guarantee you they'll tell you like he is such a hard player to play against because he's so incredibly press resistant as well. It's like you just can't get the ball off of him. Like no matter how much amount of pressure, he's just
Yeah, I
so
mean,
cool
late
and so
on, I mean,
composed.
even if we're just going to talk about the win at Newcastle, obviously Rashford grabs the headlines with his 2 goals, the second of which was just outrageous. But I mean, for me, like, St James's Park is known for being such a hard place to play and to go. And, a 2-1 up or 2-1 down for Newcastle with 7, 8, even longer than that minutes left, you're thinking that they could easily get back into this game. And they just
Absolutely, yeah,
gave the ball to Pedri, and he just like, I don't give a fuck. Like, come and press me, see what happens. I'll just pop the ball around you, then I'll get it back, then I'll pop it around you again, and I'll make you look silly. And he's just such a good player. I think there is a point to say that the kind of rankings of anyone outside of kind of the top three doesn't really matter, because nobody's going to really remember it. But I do think that there, obviously we wouldn't have done this video if we didn't think that there were things to talk about. And, I just want to mention, for example, Scott McTominay's inclusion, because I think that's just another really nice story. He obviously left Man United, and it seems to be the best thing for anyone to do right now, to leave Man United. He's
yeah,
been just, I mean, he was just just brilliant for Napoli last year as they won the Scudetto. I mean, I do try and watch a lot of European football, and Serie A is one of my favourite leagues as well. And just his performance just came on leaps and bounds. It was like watching a completely different player to the player that we saw in Manchester. So obviously, as we said earlier, Lamine Yamal didn't walk away empty-handed. He obviously won the Copper Trophy, was obviously the award for the best young player. And for the best goalkeeper, firstly for the women's, I just want to give a shout out to Hannah Hampton because I thought she had a phenomenal season and was unbelievable for England. I
Do
still
you know
can't
about
believe
her? Like,
she's
do you know?
got she's got a
Sorry, do you
visual
know about
impairment,
her with
doesn't
the?
she?
Yeah, like she can't register like depth
Depth
perception,
perception, that's
like
it. Yeah,
nowhere. So it's essentially she doesn't kind of know how close or far away the ball is to her, which for a goalkeeper
it's
that
just
is
insane.
absolutely mental.
But not
Like,
even just a
that's
goalkeeper, for
why.
like a goalkeeper that performed at that high of a level and put in the
Yeah,
performances she did in the Euros. I mean, it's just
yeah,
absolutely bonkers. So massive congratulations and shout out to Hannah Hampton. I genuinely could not be more deserved. I think Vicky Lopez from Barcelona won the kind of Copper Trophy equivalent for the women's. Again, a really good young player. She looked great for Spain. To be honest, I don't watch much domestic women's football. I will hold my hands up. Um, but
yeah. I know.
international football, I do watch a bit. Let's quickly talk about the Yashin Trophy then. So you mentioned Hannah Hampton and Donnarumma won it, and I got a load of stick on a TikTok video I posted where I was basically talking about who the best goalkeeper in the world was in the comments with somebody. I think it was I did a full goalkeeper 11 and I put Donnarumma in goal, I believe, or I said I would if it was based on who was the best keeper. And I got loads of stick from a lot of Liverpool fans saying that Alisson's the best. And obviously, the Ashen Trophy doesn't lie, as we know. And Donnarumma won it. And my main gripe with this has nothing to do with Alisson or Donnarumma. It has to do entirely with the fact that Emiliano Martinez was somehow nominated for it. I mean,
He's
why?
living off that. He's
It's
living off that
but
World Cup still. 3 years
how
on, mental.
how long can we live off of one moment? I'm being deadly serious now because he is not a great goalkeeper. He is just not a
So
great
error prone.
goalkeeper. I mean,
So
he,
error prone.
I'm trying to figure it out. I think he got 15 clean sheets 15 clean sheets in 53 games for Villa, which is good. Don't get me wrong, but he's not the. I just don't think he's that good. Like he's error prone. He's got this whole like his whole silly attitude thing he does if he saves
Inconsistent.
a
In
penalty.
other
He's
words.
just an
Yeah.
absolute bell end, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think there's one thing being a bell end. Like, you know how Jamie Vardy was always an absolute bell end, but he'd deliver consistently,
Yeah.
especially in his
Absolutely.
pomp. When he broke Ruud van Nistelrooy's consecutive goal scoring record, and
Yeah.
he was doing all his stupid twatty celebrations, but he was putting up the performances to back it. Martinez essentially went on strike at Villa because he was expecting a move, and unfortunately, the phone never rang for him because I think he's not as good as he thinks he is. And genuinely, I think if he hadn't have made that one-on-one save against Kolo Muani in the World Cup final, then I really don't think we'd be talking about him in these conversations. I'm pretty sure he won it like multiple seasons in a row as well, even though he hadn't done anything at Villa really. And
Yeah. I
especially
think
when
so.
you've got young players like Lucas Chevalier, who's now at PSG, who had such a good season, I believe for Lille maybe or Montpellier, and then I think he's played for both actually,
Lil, yeah.
but
Lil.
Lille, and then also his name escapes me. Is it Joan, the Barcelona keeper? Joan Garcia, maybe. I'm just going to double check that because I don't want to get
Oh,
that wrong because that would be
I think
embarrassing.
even it pains me to say it as well, but even like David Raya,
It's Joan Garcia.
I'd say is yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even him, like
I'd even say
David
Raya
Raya. Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
he's better
Yeah,
than
he's
and
brilliant.
I'll put my balls on the table. Dean Henderson's better than Emiliano Martinez, and I've got no doubt about that. In terms of
Yeah,
even in
no,
terms of
I'd agree.
even in terms
Yeah,
of the year he had. Okay, like saving a penalty in the FA Cup final that Palace then went on to win, and the
yeah.
general level of performances that he put up, saving the penalties in the penalty shootout in the Community Shield. I understand. I don't think that actually went towards it, but I mean, he
But
was
as
kind of the
well,
backbone of one of the best defenses in the
say
Premier League last season.
I was going to say like you don't get to is it 17 in all competitions that you're unbeaten. You don't get to that by having a crap goalkeeper and goal and having a good defense. You need the entire back line and the keeper be
In fact,
performing well.
and I just checked. Dean Henderson played less games than Martinez in all competitions domestically last season. He got the same number of clean sheets and conceded 6 less goals. So, I
I'm,
mean,
like, mate,
and this
this
is
is
the
what I'm
point.
telling you though. It's PR and a popularity contest because it's Martinez and oh, he's really silly and goofy and does all of these funny celebrations when he does something
And
or
he
like oh
dyes his
he's
hair.
the first
Yeah,
team. Yeah, and he's the first choice goalkeeper for Argentina. Dean Henderson, like your typical, for example, this is a quite a big kind of like assumption, but like your average Bundesliga fan, he's not going to be able to tell you much about Dean Henderson
no, of
because
course,
they don't see him internationally unless they watch Crystal Palace games. They don't watch him, so it's
no,
yeah,
100%.
it is media driven. It is a popularity contest. That's
And
why
to be honest,
it's
I
got
think
so much credibility as it is.
If Pickford had ever made any glaring errors for England, then Dean Henderson would be England's number one. I actually do think that Dean Henderson is the best English keeper we have at the moment. But because Pickford has always
At
been
the
so
moment, yeah,
reliable for England, he's never going to get dropped, which I don't hate. I quite like Jordan Pickford. But I think,
yeah,
that those are kind of the main talking points for me from the Ballon d'Or. The only other things I'd say, I just thought the ceremony was just a bit shit. I watched drabs of it. I was watching the English stream of it, and for example, when Dembele went up and collected his award and delivered what appeared to be a really emotional speech, I was kind of sat there
it was lovely. Yeah,
picking up drips and drabs from my GCSE French knowledge. I'm not sure why there wasn't a translator or because they know the player's going to win it and they know what language he's going to, say his acceptance speech in. So why not
yeah,
have a translator or why not have subtitles that are slightly delayed so that people can actually understand? Because it was a lovely speech by the looks of it and very emotional. And I know he spoke about his mum and his best friend and his kind of injury issues and all of this.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It went on for like 20 minutes, his speech, and I kind of was just sat there like, well, I don't really know what's going on. The other thing was, I thought the montages were just utter shite for each player. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And so Dembele wins the Ballon d'Or, and you're seeing clips from 3, 4 years ago, and just like it was just a really poor level of editing, and I just was not impressed in the slightest. And I think for the
You've
Ballon
had all
d'Or,
year to prepare for it.
you've had
Yeah,
all year. It's the Ballon d'Or for fuck's sake. It's the biggest individual prize in football, and you can't really even be asked to hire competent editors. And I'm not a great editor. Like you'll probably see from the last episode of the podcast, because Sam is having some time off, so I had to edit it, and it's not the best bit of work ever. But I think with like maybe an hour's teaching, I could have done as good of a job. Are there any other points about the Ballon d'Or or just generally that you want to bring up?
I think the only other thing I can think of, well, two things. A, Victor Gyökeres coming 15th. Oh my god. I think that should be a whole nother video in itself, so I won't talk about it.
Well,
But
especially when the
the
majority
only
of his
other
goals were
thing,
scored against Santa Clara, Rio Ave. I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw because I was before he signed for Arsenal, I was having a kind of argument with an Arsenal fan I work with, and I was saying like, he's not. Obviously, he's had a good start to the Premier League season, but I was saying he's not going to score as many goals as he did in Portugal. He scored what 55 league goals, I believe. I think 40 of them, around there or thereabouts, were against bottom 13 teams in Portugal,
yeah,
which are probably, I would hazard a guess, the equivalent to maybe upper League One, lower Championship in England. I mean, and I
exactly.
watched a lot of the highlights, extended highlights of him, and oh my god, the defending's fucking shit. It's so bad.
A lot of it, and I think that was what a lot of people's kind of concerns with him when he first signed for Arsenal was that you can't just kick the ball and run onto it like he did, I should say, in the Portuguese league. A lot of it was just kind of kick and run, kind of
And
just
just
form
no
goes away
pressure
from
either.
defenders.
Yeah, he just dribbled past 6 or 7 defenders and nobody even bothers to try and tackle him. So what is going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
genuinely
but
couldn't agree more. He should not.
no,
He's not a top 30 player in the world. You can't convince me of that.
no. And I was going to say something. What was I going to say? I think as well, like the point that I made about whether, like you can't really judge a player because of who they're having to play against, like the league that they're in. because they can only play who they're up against. And if they are scoring outrageous numbers, it does show that they are a very good player who is probably too good for that league. Um, but like you said, the fact that he was only doing it against, the bottom 13, like 12, 13 teams, and he wasn't doing it against kind of the higher competition, Benfica, your Portos, teams like that, kind of does show maybe the caliber of player he is, and that he shouldn't have came only 2 places behind Harry Kane, three behind Kvaratskhelia.
No, and like obviously he's a
Martinelli as
good
well.
player, and he obviously did do well in the Champions League. But yeah, for me, he's just nowhere near a top 30 men's player in the world. I don't think that's even an argument, to be honest. I think I could probably name 6 or 7 players in the Arsenal team that are better footballers than Victor Gyökeres. Anyway, I think we will probably call it a day there. We said it would be a quick episode. It's ended up being a nice 45-minute chat, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Long live the Ballon d'Or. It always brings up some nice talking points. I do think the days are over when just 2 players will dominate it for a long time, because even though we saw seen with Mbappe and Haaland coming through, we were all talking about those 2, and correct me if I'm wrong, but neither have won a Ballon d'Or yet.
Who, Mbappe and Haaland?
Yeah.
No, neither of them have. No, I
So we
think
were
Haaland
saying,
came, I want to say, second or third
yeah,
in his debut season for City when they won the Champions League. I think.
yeah, I think you're
Like,
right, and
that surprised a lot.
And so, we were saying that, and then we were saying, maybe Desiree Doué and Lamine Yamal now, and then Dembele's gone and won it. I think we're in the kind of era where there are so many good players that, there's no reason why, for example, if Michael Elise puts up 50, 55 goal contributions and Bayern go deep in the Champions League and France do well at the World Cup next summer, that he can't win a Ballon d'Or. And I think that's brilliant. It's a brilliant place for the sport to be in, because ultimately the more good players there are, the better. And I'm not suggesting that when Messi and Ronaldo were dominating that there was a lack of good players, but I definitely say that the number of top players and elite players and like players that could be considered for a Ballon d'Or and quite rightly have a shout, I don't think it's ever been as high. I mean, just counting off the top of my head, Ousmane Dembele, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, Mo Salah, that's 4. Adding maybe the likes of Vitinha, Harry Kane, obviously. There's easily, comfortably, I think 5 or 6 players this year that you could have staked a strong claim for winning the Ballon d'Or, and I think that's just brilliant. And
It is. It's gutting for, like, when you think of players like Neymar, who they were playing in such a dominated period of era of football in Messi and Ronaldo. Whereas I think now, if you would have taken one of Neymar's seasons that he had, particularly maybe the 2015 season where they won the treble, I think he would absolutely walk this year's Ballon d'Or. I think
100%,
numbers and how it's, yeah.
without
Feel
without a
bad for players like
shadow
that.
of a doubt. But also the only
Suarez.
caveat, yeah, oh for sure, and Suarez as well. The only caveat I'd have is that I reckon if you put one of these players, for example, Rafinha, in at the same time as Lionel Messi and Ronaldo, and he'd outscored both of them, he'd put up better numbers than both of them. I still think even Messi and Ronaldo would have won it because of the PR, and it was always going to be every year. It wasn't even a question. It was, is it going to be Messi? Is it going to be Ronaldo? I don't know who's won the Champions League. Essentially, that's kind of what it came down to, because obviously for a large amount of time they were both playing in the same league. So did Real Madrid win the league, and did they go far in the Champions League / win it? Yeah, perfect. Ronaldo's winning it. Likewise for Messi. But I think the minute where we are, it's just such a refreshing and positive space for the sport as a whole. I couldn't tell you who's going to win it next year, and I think that's quite exciting.
Who do you
I
want
also,
to? Who do
who
you
do I
want
want to win? Well, I want Michael Elise to win it.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Fair enough, yeah.
But I mean, the way he started the season with Bayern, to be honest, there's no reason he couldn't if they can do something magical in the Champions League. I would also love to see someone like Desiree Doué win it, because I absolutely love him as well. Or maybe throw it back to when Modric won it and we see a midfielder win it, maybe a Vitinha or a João Neves or one of these players. I just want variety, and I also love the fact that it didn't get leaked who'd won it. I think that was great. What is the point
I bet they
when
paid him money.
what's keep him
I bet they
quiet?
paid it. paid Fabrizio not to keep him quiet. I
Either
think
that
it.
or they just kept it super tight, like lip sealed about it. Because, I mean, it was just so boring last year. Like, and obviously, I think the antics of the Real Madrid squad and Vinicius Junior, and even Carlo Ancelotti. Like, I think the antics of that, we already knew that Rodri had won it because, you know, his main competitor hadn't bothered to show up, which obviously meant he hadn't won it.
Yeah,
We also knew that Rodri won it because Rodri was by far and away the best player in the world last year. So yeah,
yeah,
for me, I think we've spoken for a nice little bit, and we've covered quite a lot of points. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me late on a Tuesday night. This will probably be with you guys on Friday, just before the weekend. Something to dig your teeth into before the football gets back. Obviously, we'll be back. The next episode you will see will be probably Monday or Tuesday, and that'll be reaction to not only game week 6 of the Premier League, where both the two only unbeaten teams in the Premier League, Palace and Liverpool, face off against each other, where hopefully Palace can extend the run to 18 games. But also we'll be reacting to the entirety of the game week 6 in the Premier League. We'll be talking about the League Cup fixtures that have happened and the draw, if there's any spicy draws that take place. We'll also talk about the first kind of round of Europa League games, which I believe are taking place tomorrow and the following day. So that's all for today or tonight, whenever you're watching this. I hope you have a lovely rest of your morning, day, whatever time. I'm so tired right now. But thank you for listening. Remember to follow the podcast on all our social medias, subscribe on YouTube, leave a like on the video, or if you're on Spotify, drop a follow and rate us 5 stars. That would be much appreciated. We're back now after a nice long break over the international break, and the videos are going to be very, very consistent. I promise you that. So once again, thanks, Kyle, and we will see you very, very soon.